You ever see a dog running through a storm and think, yeah, that's got to be the unluckiest, most stubborn creature on earth? Well, that night, it was Shadow, just a scrappy German shepherd with fur caked in mud and blood, limping through the pounding rain like the universe had set every goddamn obstacle just for him. I swear, that dog looked possessed, eyes blazing ahead while behind him. The Reynolds mansion was going up in flames, and somewhere in the smoke, an 8-year-old boy Masson was trapped, paralyzed, helpless in a bed built just for a kid who'd lost everything in a split second. See, before all this, Mason wasn't some tragic case in a wheelchair. He was that loud, tree-climbing, baseball-smacking kid you see in movies, the one who laughs too hard at his own jokes. All that changed in one instant. Some delivery truck hydroplaned across a slick road, snatched his mom away, and left Mason unable to move from the waist down. The shock didn't just rob him of his legs, it took his voice too. The kid hadn't spoken a word in almost a year. His dad, Alexander Reynolds, that Alexander, the cybersecurity mogul you read about in Forbes, tried to buy hope with doctors and gadgets, converted half their house into a rehab hospital, but all the money in the world can't fix a broken heart. Their mansion, once buzzing with life, sounded more like an icy cold hollow, haunted by the whisper of wheelchair wheels on marble. But here's where fate gets weird. Enter Ellie Winters, 30, shelter manager, jeans perpetually dirty, ponytail a disaster, but heart pure gold. She'd rescued every misfit animal you could imagine, but Shadow was different. He'd been returned 7 times. People said he was dangerous, unpredictable, probably cursed. What they didn't see was the fear underneath this smart dog who'd been burned by humans too many times. Last straw came when he growled at a toddler, and that was it. Euthanasia list. That same week, Mason's therapist floated the idea of animal therapy sometimes. She said, a kid will open up to a dog when they've shut out the whole world. Alexander was desperate enough to listen, though his lawyer friend Robert thought it was a joke. A dog? What's next, a pony? But like I said, desperation changes a man. So they ended up at Oakwood Shelter. Place smelled like disinfectant and damp fur, a far cry from the polished pines and priceless art back home. Ellie, not easily impressed, spotted Alexander and Mason, recognizing the billionaire from the news, and gave them the whole tour. Every good-natured mutt, every gentle soul. Mason ignored them all, eyes glued to the floor, heart somewhere no one could reach. Finally, at the last kennel, Ellie stopped. This is Shadow. The dog didn't move, just watched from the back, scar across his muzzle, ear notched like he'd survived 100 fights. He's not antisocial, just careful, Ellie said. People expect too much too soon. Alexander, ready to leave, noticed Mason suddenly looking up. The kid, silent for months, reached out, and Shadow crept forward, nose twitching, testing the air. Mason pressed his palm to the wire. Time seemed to freeze. Then, for the first time, Mason nodded. Ellie's eyes went wide. Want to meet him? She asked, and Mason actually nodded. First voluntary response in nearly a year. They brought Shadow into a small, messy room. Ellie released the leash, told everyone to sit quiet. The dog circled, keeping his distance, then approached Mason slow as a sunrise. Mason reached out, and Shadow pressed his head into the boy's hand. The kid whispered, "Dog." One word. First in 11 months. Alexander nearly broke down. "We'll take him," he blurted. Ellie, though, wasn't about to let them waltz out. "He's not a toy. He needs patience. He's been through a lot." Alexander cut her off, emotional for the first time in years. "Whatever he needs, he'll have." So, paperwork signed, and Shadow rode home with them, awkward, tense, but hopeful. First week, the mansion changed. Shadow's nails clicked down hallways that had been silent for months. Staff thawed, sneaking him treats despite the rules. Every night, Shadow refused to sleep anywhere but beside Mason's bed. By the third night, Mason whispered, "Let him stay." Alexander caved, grateful his boy was speaking again, even if it was only about the dog. Progress was slow, but real. Mason started stringing words together, especially commands to Shadow. The doctors called it a miracle, Alexander just called it life returning. Until one night, Shadow barked like a banshee at Alexander's door at 3 a.m. Annoyed, Alexander got up, followed the dog, and found Mason mid-seizure. The dog hadn't just sensed it known before it started. Shadow saved him that night. Tests confirmed it. Shadow could detect Mason's seizures before they happened. "It's rare, Dr. Mitchell said, but some dogs just..." No. Suddenly, Mason's world got bigger. Shadow was trained further, and the dog became his boy's shadow in every sense. But nothing's ever that easy. 17 days after Shadow arrived, a grizzled man showed up at the mansion. Claimed the dog was his name's Max. "He was stolen from me, trained as a diabetic alert for my daughter." Alexander, never one to back down, said, "Take it up with the shelter." But the tension was there, simmering. Ellie came by with files. Turns out Shadow had bounced through 7 families, each return tied to aggression that always happened around medical emergencies: allergic reactions, gas leaks, diabetic crashes. Shadow hadn't been bad, just misunderstood. He'd been saving lives all along, but nobody saw it. The real twist? The man's story fell apart. Turns out he'd sold Shadow for cash, then lied about it. His ex-wife wanted the dog back for their sick daughter, but when she saw Mason's progress, she agreed to accept a new service dog instead. Alexander's foundation paid for it all. Meanwhile, the world outside started to notice. Protesters, journalists, even boardroom drama. People called Alexander reckless for trusting a dangerous breed with his fragile son. But as more families stepped forward with their own misunderstood hero dogs, the tide began to turn. Mason, with Shadow's help, started attending school again, his confidence coming back day by day. Then came the storm. It hit one night while Alexander was at a late meeting. Mansion lost power, backup generator failed. Mason, alone upstairs, trapped in his bed as smoke crept under the door, called out, but nobody answered. Shadow barked, whined, tried everything to get help. Finally, Mason told him, "Go get Dad. Go." The dog ran into the storm, cut through mud and darkness, barking at passing cars, desperate to bring someone back. Alexander, racing home through flooded roads, was intercepted by Shadow. Instead of running into the burning house, Shadow led Alexander around to a hidden entrance, the old service tunnel. They got to Mason just in time, carried him out as fire trucks pulled up, Shadow always a step ahead, guiding them through chaos. But Shadow wasn't done. The dog raced back into the inferno. This time, for Charles the security guard and Mrs. Bentley the housekeeper. Firefighters pulled Mason and Alexander to safety, but Shadow didn't come out. Mason begged them not to give up. "He's my friend. He saved me," but nobody held out much hope. Hours passed. Nothing. That's when the twist hit. Security footage survived the fire. Shadow had dragged Mrs. Bentley down a smoke-filled corridor on a doormat, saving her life before disappearing back into the house. Then, just as the last hope faded, the fire chief called. They'd found a whimpering dog, alive but badly burned, trapped under a collapsed table. Shadow beaten, but alive. Mason was the first by his side at the animal hospital, whispering words the dog somehow heard, tail thumping once in reply. The road back was brutal surgeries, rehab, pain, but the boy and his dog pulled through together. 6 months later, the Reynolds estate wasn't just rebuilt, it was transformed. Alexander founded a rescue program in Shadow's name, training misunderstood dogs as service animals for kids like Mason. Dr. Pierce, the top animal behaviorist in the country, led the way, inspired by Shadow's bond with Mason. Public opinion flipped. Even the Foundation's critics backed down when they saw footage of Shadow's heroism. News, social media, even boardroom politics couldn't spin against that kind of loyalty. Mason spoke before crowds of kids at the new training center. Shadow was a dog nobody wanted. But he saved me. Sometimes, all you need is someone to believe in you. By the time Mason took his first steps, hand gripping the bars, Shadow steady at his side, there wasn't a dry eye in the house. Kids from the hospital, parents, therapists, everyone understood. Healing isn't always neat. Sometimes it takes a storm, a tragedy, and a dog with a scarred face and a second chance. So what's justice? What's family? Maybe it's a boy and a dog, saving each other over and over, even when nobody else believes they can. Maybe it's seeing worth where others see trouble. Maybe it's knowing that sometimes the ones society throws away end up being the very ones who carry us home. Now, I gotta ask, if you were in Alexander's shoes, would you have fought that hard for a problem dog? What would you have done if your child needed a friend more than medicine? Do you believe every creature deserves a second chance? Or are there some mistakes that just can't be forgiven? Drop your thoughts below. Where do you stand on redemption, loyalty, and what really makes a hero?